Hello and welcome to the last session of the March Equinox Solidarity Summit hosted by Humans United and Mutual Aid Networks. I'll share in the chat a place to find more information about being involved on a more ongoing basis. And this is the book club for The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow. And what we're going to do is just have a pretty open conversation, but we're going to start by doing a round where we introduce ourselves. And during our introduction, work on building a bit of a crowdsourced synopsis of this book. And then we'll go into sort of what the key takeaways have been for us and ways that we want to apply what we've learned into the future. And any questions that emerge as we go are welcome. So I think Gorast has probably the most thorough synopsis of the book available. So can you just tell us who you are and where you are before you go into?
Okay. I'm Gorast from Slovenia, close to Hungarian border right now, otherwise from Ljubljana. And I'm involved in some projects that involve cooperation, reciprocity loop, sharing of the resources and stuff like that. So all around cooperative movement and things like that. So should I go directly to the book, or should we go first introduction round and then to the book?
I think Kate, was that a suggestion for an introduction round? Okay. Yes, I believe that you and Chris are the people who haven't yet met. So maybe Chris, you want to introduce yourself next?
Yes, okay. Hi, everyone, but especially Gorazd, because I haven't spoken to you yet. I'm Chris Gray, and I have been involved with time banking for the last 20 years, since 1999, as Edgar's wife and partner, Edgar Khan's wife and partner. And I would just say that one of the things that has really fascinated me is just all these questions around how do you use and how do you use a complementary currency? I'm being inarticulate. I'm just going to say many questions have arisen around the use and growth and development of time banking, its position, its place in economics, in economies, so many questions. So I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so the book, I'm not sure that if I'm the proper one to give you a short synopsis, because I read the book. Actually, it was as soon as I could get the hands on a PDF. So it was, I think it was in summer, something like that. And I really went through it extremely quickly, which I usually do when something is really interesting. And I first go like skimming through all the stuff, and then to then leave it for some time, and then go back later to read it really thoroughly and take out the stuff. So I'm still in that space where I still wait to go a more thorough read through the book. But the book is actually a long, it should be done like 200 years ago. Because what it does, it gives you a totally different view on the way how we humans evolved, and it actually trashes the narrative that we somehow were noble savage men, and then because of the agriculture we had to accept all the shitty things that come with states and repression and policing the and the taxation, of course. That's inevitable. Taxation is the most important thing in all these things. So, and that this is inevitable, that this is how it is done, and this is how it has to be, and you can't really escape. And so, and actually, what they show, both authors, this is far, far, far from truth. We were experimenting this different organizations of society all over the world. I had different approaches. Something worked, something didn't. We adapted to a different circumstances, and it is one of the amazing things when you start thinking about that is that so successful Western thought and all this Western tech and all the success that we had with killing a bunch of people all around who didn't want to listen to our nice thoughts, and that our notion of freedom and liberties and democracy actually comes from Indians that we slaughtered so happily in the United States, and if it is if you look at it, they do play with that, and they do say that it's they give this perspective that European enlightenment wouldn't be the same without Indians' thought and Indians' critics of European culture and supremacy and all these things. So it is really good thing to read because it gives you tons of ideas, and it is how, and you can have a lot of out when you work with alternative ways to lead a life on this way. So this is about this, then of course there is tons of stuff that we can go in, but let's just Stephanie, you read it, you are more into it than I am now.
Yeah, so I still have the conclusion chapter to go, and I thought that was a very good brief synopsis. Some of the specific things that really were interesting to me, well, so you touched on it. It's just sort of the overall misrepresentation of what indigenous cultures were like and were doing, and it was just based on European supremacy notions at the time. Where, for example, European explorers would go back with stories about these large and in-depth political discourses and big debates and big uh, democratic processes and bodies, and then the other Europeans would just call it like a thought experiment, as though it only could have existed in the imagination of the European writing about it, and it must be referring to some Greek models. So there's a whole lot of that, a lot of archaeological evidence that shows people's autonomy and intelligence and highly organized situations in a variety of settings, in a variety of ways. And also one of the things that was really cool to me is reading about a number of these of different cultures where it was commonplace for people to just leave a city if a tyrannical leader emerged that they weren't willing to follow. And part of it was places were more sparsely populated. People were adept at, I mean, they were foragers and hunters in a lot of circumstances that um, archaeologically, I guess we haven't believed that they were, have been learning that there have been a lot more hunting and foraging cultures, a lot more cultures that explicitly didn't choose to adopt agriculture and um, saw larger scale agriculture as somewhat a chain, like chaining you to harder work and to a place. So yeah, people were more adept at actually surviving and thriving in ways that didn't rely on them staying in place, and they could take off when a despot took over their place. So that was, yeah, that was really interesting. And also the archaeological evidence um, for the some of the large scale metropolis civilizations, not necessarily collapsing, but people choosing to walk away from it because it's no longer working.
Yep. There is these three essential things that they put together that we had and we somehow lost. It is that freedom to move wherever you want to go, the freedom to disobey if you don't want to listen, and the freedom to build this new social relationship whenever you see fit. And that's something that we cannot comprehend now anymore, because we so blindly obey whatever shitty things they throw at us that we don't even realize that we could really stop doing that. It is a little bit difficult to simply walk away, because it is so the civilization is all over the place. So even if you move to some crazy location, sooner or later they will come after you. So that's a little bit problematic, but still. And maybe one of the things that's I wanted to maybe if those who, how many of you read the David Graeber's book 5,000 Years of Debt? Okay, because it is really good introduction to this one, the Dawn of Everything. It's really good way to read that even first, and then this one, and you can then combine stuff. So yeah, and also one thing that is also described in is that it is not necessary to have a metropolis and a big constellation of people together that you need agriculture. You don't need it. You can do it without agriculture, and it has been done and it has been executed. So it's not that you go this first you have to invent agriculture. Once you invented that, then you can have the people coming together, then you have the metropolis, then you have the religion, blah blah blah, and so it goes. It's not that way at all. Well, there are some stuff that turns the history the way we know it upside down.
Kate, did you want to throw something in?
I don't think I can really add anything to that, because I'm only sort of part way through it, but that's certainly what I'm picking up. But there was definitely the sort of arrogance of the French, but there was also, and again, yeah, and how that was written about as well. So this was written about, wasn't it? Which is interesting. I've been doing this sporadically, and my memory is atrocious. So it's helpful just hearing you talking about it. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, it's more rah. yeah. And I think something that struck me was the fact that people could be like nomadic, but then they'd come together at time. I thought that was interesting as well, and I liked that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the key things that we haven't mentioned yet, is that a lot of cultures organized along seasonal lines. So a lot of cultures where it appears that there's a place that they'll have a city center during the winter months, and then in summer, and just depending on the different cycles and what's needed for the seasons.
Yeah, I thought that was powerful.
It just gives you a lot more I guess yeah, I'm of two minds about it. It makes me think of, like, when we talk about time banks or mutual aid or anything, people will be like, "Can you show me a place where it's working?" And they like can't even imagine doing something that someone else isn't already doing, and that I kind of chafe at that. And at the same time,
Okay, my
it's
internet
taken
is
those
breaking a
things to.
little bit, so I'm if I disappear, it's my internet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and at the same time, it's taken those kind of examples to unlock me as well. So, although I wish that you didn't have to have those examples of where it has worked, a lot of times that's what it takes to make it possible in your imagination. And so, besides this book, sort of sharing all these different ways that societies appear to have been structured, some very non-hierarchical and very built on mutual aid. Um, it's also getting into some ways that they have shared the information to share the learning in like very explicit ways, and some ways that they've come very yeah, very gracefully, sort of geometrically and mathematically, to create mutual aid systems that are quite effective. For example, um, some, I don't know if they'd be villages or some places where the housing is arranged as a circle, and there are cycles like the care of death and dying passes one house to left each period of time, and this other like care of procuring food passes one house to the right each time, with systems of, so someone can substitute if someone's incapable of it, like building in a lot of safeguards and stuff. And also in a number of these stories, like ways that you share your learning over time. So this one culture that I just read about yesterday um, would describe each move to a new system as moving into a new country, but looks like they didn't physically move. They just like made a new country around them, incorporating the learning, and arranging themselves differently. So incorporating their learning and building on it to solve their problems and needs.
Yep, it's also one of the things that I remember was the critiques of Indians regarding the European way of life. And they said, well, you are too competitive, you are too selfish, you are hostile to freedom, and you have blind submission to authority, which is actually exactly what we are saying today. And what is so revered in the mainstream media, competitiveness will save us all. It's selfishness that will bring us to crazy. And it's actually, it's amazing that this is with that even with all this knowledge that we had thousands of years ago, we are still here where we are. This is crazy.
Chris, well, anyone who wants to jump in, I'm like totally happy to hear your questions or perspectives. But also, Chris has done a lot of work studying like Native American people and systems. Do you want to share anything from your perspective in that?
Um, yeah, no, this is so very, very interesting. For those of you who don't know, I should just share that I have I have a PhD in political science, and my thesis was on the relationship over time. Actually, it was American political development, and it was what it set out to be. How did the relationship between the United States and the indigenous peoples have an impact on the United States? And at the time that I was writing it, that question was simply not asked. It was like it didn't have any effect. Um, the people were always on the edge, on the outs, on the political edge, on the territorial edge, on the outside of the United States, and the United States sort of grew itself up from influence, European influence, and not from any influence by the indigenous peoples that it overran. So I actually did not answer that question very well. I instead just really traced this journey from the United States declaring its independence from Britain in 1776 to the indigenous peoples here, the passage of the Native American Self-Determination Act in 1975, 199 years later, the indigenous peoples, the tribes, that got a measure of sovereignty recognized by the United States. And so I was asking, I changed my question to ask, how did it come to be? What was this trajectory of domination and overrunning of these tribes and attempts to basically push them always out and out, and then having to trying to erase them in the early 20th century, and then eventually admitting that they were sovereign peoples within the territorial reach of the United States. So in the process, I actually started out to write a different thesis on Alaska Native subsistence and sovereignty, to ask the question, how did the Alaska Natives secure their lifestyle given the economic and political systems of the United States being so alien to them? So I went around Alaska actually meeting with tribal leaders and talking with different tribal leaders and seeing how the Alaska Native villages, which they call themselves, had adapted or not adapted or held onto their own culture and so forth. And it was, as you can imagine, a very complex picture because every one of the tribes, there were patterns, but a huge amount of variability within those patterns. And it really has been a situation of two entirely incompatible ways of seeing the world, confronting each other, and uh, rarely accommodating each other, rarely. And you know the burden of accommodation has been placed, of course, on the indigenous peoples much more than on the European peoples. And as you say, Gaurav, there was surely some influence around questions of freedom, democracy, and so forth, because the tribes were so free. There was some absolutely sort of tragic, I mean, so much of it was so tragic for the tribes and so much lost around cultural innovativeness and possible ways of structuring society. And I asked myself the question actually many times, how was it that this sort of European basic form of culture, land property ownership, and so forth, was able to become so dominant? I actually think that in part, and make the argument, this is not relevant maybe, but I'll put it there, in the early chapters of the book, that the existence and success of the United States was in part dependent on the fact that they joined together against a common in quotes foe, which was the Native Americans. They would not have come together if those Native Americans, if they had not had to band their energies, and if the land had in fact been free and open terra nullius, as they claimed it was. They would have been fighting every inch of the way all the time. There was so much fighting for that land early on. It was so. Yeah, we have a very Eurocentric view of American political development. And just hearing what you've been saying, one of the things, of course, there were thousands of tribes across the length and breadth of the United States before they were so decimated by European disease, and thousands of experiments in social structure. And even in those few that remained, were able to withstand the onslaught of disease and then, military well, it wasn't just military conquest, but the sort of conquest, there's still so many different ways in which the tribes had organized themselves and had the philosophical bases of their organization was very varied. So it's absolutely fascinating to hear what you're saying. And I have to read that book. Again, that wasn't the tack that I was taking. I was really doing a story of America's political development and and its relationship with the tribes. Yeah.
I happened to read the book Debt at the same time that I was reading Charles Mann's 1491, which also connects. I mean, for me, well, anyhow, this book, The Dawn of Everything, feels like it's connecting a number of perspectives from both of those books. And 1491 was talking a lot about how the whole concept of freedom that developed here was from the. I'm not sure how do you pronounce it. Haudenosaunee, Haud,
It sounds good. I'm not good on some of these pronunciations either.
and also ideas of women having a more equal and respected role in society. So those are all big pieces. And then one other thing that I thought was really it was just really interesting, especially in context of like what we're working on, building solidarity across locations and communities, is one of the structures that they write about in the book is people belonging to like a clan based, like a clan that's across like actual spatial territory and probably across languages and things, but it has a cultural basis and it connected with an animal like the bear clan or the wolf clan, and that anywhere you go, other people from that clan would be hosting you. So there's like a mutual obligation based on clan across space. So just in terms of thinking about how we organize in ways where we have autonomous and independent but interdependent groups of people who are capable of supporting each other across space. I thought that's a very nice way to, or like nice isn't a very good adjective, but it's a lovely way to have things be organized and have people relate to one another.
I would actually like to just bring up the creek. So the creek had that kind of structure. It was a very elaborate structure of governance and clan structure with very well prescribed rules. And they were able, so I think it is also easy to romanticize the tribes as if they were not um, themselves seeking dominance in many cases against other tribes. And the Creek did actually become a very dominant presence because their social structure was so effective at doing collective action as well as individual um, um, benefit. So, and one of the very interesting things about it, the interaction between the Creek and the United States was, and basically the Creek and the way of living and the European way of living was that there were many sort of intersections and similarities between them. And so the Creek were actually um, absorbing European ways of doing things. And there could have been a cross cultural absorption by the Europeans. Interestingly, the governor of Georgia was a cousin of one of the leaders of the Creek, and yet he was implacably oriented towards erasing that native culture. And why and how um, that um, implacable sort of not belief, desire to erase that culture. That is one of the interesting things too. I'm it's sort of this yeah, it's just a really interesting question why the United States drove so hard. You can just say, well, it was in pursuit of territory, and that pursuit of territory was always centered on private property. And so individuals were, as it were, ganging up to get private property. And against that thrust of getting private property, this beautiful and elaborate social structure that the Creeks had was fragmented over time and frayed and eventually couldn't hold up. And it's a bit like the loss of a forest to raising cattle, you know, or the loss of exotic flora and fauna to invasive weeds. It's a similar kind of process going on. Something that was beautifully adapted gave way to something that was sort of brute, simple, and relied on brute force, which the Europeans had.
Yes. So anybody, Cyril or Gorast?
There is a book written by I think it was his name is Neil Ferguson, something like that.
Right.
Talking about five killer apps that European had to conquer the world. It was called West and the Rest. I think it was the title of the book.
What was the title?
West and the Rest.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I'll double check. I'll double check, and I can put it then in somewhere. And he was explaining. Well, it was of course a mixture of things, and I don't remember all the five these killer apps. And I found them really aptly named because they were really killing people all over the place. Even though Ferguson was explaining it as a killer app in software that was so successful. And I think this guy is a marketing scientist, and he was really doing it. The whole book is like a marketing for European success. It's not far from what Graeber and the Wengrow is doing. But there are there were some things that he what helped Europeans, and that's precisely what is killing all these things. The way the Europe behaved, the way that we were trained to think, which is competitiveness, selfishness, this all this blind submission to authority. This is a direct opposite of what you need if you want to thrive together with nature. And it is like a cancer. It just goes, and when you combine that with technology and a little bit advanced weaponry, game's over. That's the problem. You need, I think that what the message from this from history is that if you want to live peacefully and live in together with nature, you need. It's not enough that you are smart. It's not enough that you are, I don't know, that you know stuff. You need to be empathic. You need to connect with other living beings and understand how the things work. Not just saying that bullshit. This is the way how it is, which is what Europeans did all the time. I mean, I remember from I don't remember which book was it. I think maybe it was that from David Graeber, when the Portuguese came to Indian to Muslim countries. There was in Muslim countries in those times. I don't know if it is still now. There was a agreement among everybody that you can have the war on the land, but the second somebody jumps into the boat and it's on the water, stop. You cannot. This is you cannot do anything. He's on a safe ground, and this was going on for I don't know how many centuries, And then the Portuguese came, and they didn't care. They just killed everybody. So they managed to conquer everything just by not following the such a sacred rules. So we Europeans, basically, we didn't give a shit about everything. We just go.
I think we may not put too much on European, because what you say is that the Muslim, before they were killing us each time we were crossing Mediterranean Sea, make slave. So I think the violence and the stupidity has been unfortunately everywhere. And maybe, yes, the last centuries, it's really more coming from the white. But there were time also that in, I don't know everywhere in Europe, but I've studied in France, that it was really not like this. The depth is exactly when we are not following the common law, like not making too much interest when if you give a loan to someone or something like this. Then when we, and what I've seen, it's with what it is called the Great Discovery, and when all the European went in the America, and then it was the first time by that some people that were a bit rich and they bet on the ship that they will come back with something, have win so much, and it has totally unroots the wealth from anything, because with the cost of some ship, boat, I mean, they were, because they were stealing the gold and everything to the native in America, so they were coming with so much. And apparently it was the first time that it was totally, the investment and the return on investment were so big, and nothing before was like this, and it has made people, it's still the same that are trying to rule the world, actually. The same family that have been rich from betting on this boat. So because I don't want, I've been also in some tribes, and I at this time I had some really perfect belief on them, but I've seen that it's not so paradise, and every type of civilization organization have some pro and cons, and so I think it's good to get inspired from the past and from even what it still exists, the Balinese way of co-manage their common land is very interesting, but not to be too too much. Idealistic on the past, the good old past, and that the indigenous were perfect. I think
No.
it's wrong too.
Also, we've been focusing a lot on the parts of the book that are talking about the Americas, indigenous cultures, but there's a lot about ancient culture in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Minoan Crete. But some of the examples that I forgot to mention are really cool also, where I forget which one this was, but it had been like very hierarchical, ritual sacrifice, all kinds of this stuff gave way not long after it became completely like everything, and like the temple got devoted to housing, and there was all this like uniform in size and well structured housing that was like showed that everyone was having a good quality of life. Like they had really, it looks like archaeological evidence for a decisive shift quickly away from something brutal into something quite egalitarian and plentiful, it looked like. So yeah, those are a couple of the other examples.
One of the questions that he asks in the first book, in the book on debt, is, or one of the observations he makes is that cultures trend, so many cultures trend to inequality, and fewer and fewer and fewer people owning stuff over time. And then there comes this moment where the society either does or does not intentionally equalize, which brings up the sort of Jubilee project. But what do societies do when they get to the point where they're so unequal, when they've become so unequal? And we have got to that point. All over the world, we have this extreme, extreme inequality. I mean, Bezos going up to the moon or up into space rather, when his workers aren't earning enough to live on every week. It's obscene, and yet we have no mechanism at all for re-equalizing. And I don't know if that comes up in the book about how societies found to do that. Hi, Kurt and Emily.
It does
Hello.
a little bit about Jubilee. Do you guys want to say hi, and do you want to make a quick introduction? It's up to you.
Sure. Again,
Oh,
an event planning meeting for Hope Stack taking place July 29th, 30th, 31st. Will be an online event through that weekend. And so happy to be able to come over here and catch up to the book club. So thank you.
welcome. Is there anything that you feel like you want to say about the book, or should we just keep on with the conversation? It's up to you.
If you want to keep on with the conversation, that's great. I don't have anything to add right now.
I don't want it to be like school, but I want you to be able to say something if you want to. Same with you, Emily. This isn't school, but welcome if you want to say hi. And if you want to say something about the book, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. Good to see you. So, Goras, it looked like you were going to say something before I jumped in there.
Yeah, that's my internet is again unstable. So if I disappear or appear, or if I'm not responsive, it's my internet breaking up. So I don't know what happened today. It seems that also internet has a Sunday not working. So something about these lines. I actually forgot what I wanted to say, to be honest.
You're talking about, I was talking about inequality.
Yes. And what about how we can apply some stuff that you have read?
Yeah.
When we use some stuff, if there are.
Well, there are. The thing is that it seems that this crazy notion of that we are so afraid of, this endless public discussions about stuff and talking about this, that this actually works. It's not. It is the problem that that we do not know how to talk to each other. And it was funny for me because I had this same feeling, and it took me really crazy experiment that I realized what the problem is when we interrupt each other, and when somebody is talking and then we interrupt the talker and we start to take over. And I do it all the time. It's terrible, I know. But the thing is that this was one of the things that also Graeber mentions in a book, that Indians were talking to Europeans. They said, you don't know how to talk to each other. You are quarreling all the time. You are interrupting each other. And I had a experience once with in one session with one psychology guy, when I needed to be silent for half an hour while somebody else was explaining stuff that I didn't agree with. Oh, that was the terrible experience. I had to be quiet, and I knew that this was not like that. And actually, I was furious for 2 days after that. But then it hit me. Then it hit me that actually, when we jump in and cut off the speaker, what we do is actually we impose our own reality onto her or him, and this is not a way to understand each other. You have to listen, and even if you don't agree, you still have to listen and then go with arguments. And this, we don't know how to argue, and we just assert our individual views and don't move. And what this is something that we need to practice, I think, a lot, and to work that. The problem is, of course, that this takes time, and we don't have much time. That's also true.
But it can be learned, because I learned this with some Native Americans in Brazil and in Africa. Yes, to learn to speak and to not cut speech of the other, but also to speak more concisely, more short. Because, and then I remember the one who I've written the book with, Eric Julien. So I don't know this Koji from Colombia, but they have the use when it's very important. All the tribes go in a cave, in a black tent. So stay in the black, in the dark, and they don't go out until it's solved. and because
Wow.
it's dark and they will not have food, but finally they find a way that, and it's always that no one has a problem with the decision. So everyone consent or no objection, as we know. And I think this, I agree that we don't know. We are not trained. At school, we are trained to shut up, but then after we always want to speak. This is weird. But I see, because when I teach sociocracy or things like this, it's something that can be learned. It's not, and sure, it's one of the very important, how to communicate, but how to listen and also how to speak. And I remember when we were in some circle with 70 people and you have to stand up and speak, but then about your intention for instance, 4 days of some eating rituals or things like this, you have to be clear, concise, and speak enough loud that everyone understands. And so it's also an exercise of assertiveness. That's very interesting too.
Hi, I see Denise and Tim are here too. So we're just at the part where we're talking about how we could apply this book to the future. And I would love it if you want to say hi and introduce yourselves. And if you want to say anything about the book, feel free. And if you would rather not, that's fine too. Hi,
hello, I'm Denise, and I'm in New York. And I'd love to say something about the book, but actually I just popped in. I'm not really sure what book we are actually reading. Well, I'm not reading it because I don't know what book it is, but yeah, definitely. I'd like to know, and maybe, yeah, I can definitely look it up and see what I can contribute.
Welcome. And it's the book, The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow. A new look at our ancient past with some lessons for our present. Hi, Emily. Did you want to say hi and introduce yourself? Nice.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily from Madison, and finding this interesting.
Welcome. You're looking cosmic with that background. Hi, Sim. Want to say hello? All right. If you decide to jump in, feel free. So, ways to apply lessons into the future from this book. For me, one is first of all, I'm really glad this book's really popular. It's really hard to get because it sells out all the time. Like I had to read an ebook, which is not my preference. It's still not, hasn't been possible to get it. So just sharing the story that shows that people have often lived differently and where we are isn't inevitable is super helpful. Sharing the stories about collapse of a civilization isn't uh I mean, first of all, I guess I wouldn't share the story this way, but they refer to, like, when we think of a civilizational collapse, it's not like everyone falls to the ground and disappears. Like, people keep living in different ways, and sometimes those periods that are thought of as dark ages or pre or post something are really very rich areas of real experimentation and development of different ways of living. And that one example of the very hierarchical place that clearly turned into very equitable and abundant housing for everyone, like those kind of stories, just knowing they're possible. And then I also just the actual very explicit descriptions of places, like that one place where different types of mutual aid pass from household to household in really specific arrangements. Those are really helpful. Knowing um, some ways that people have been able to identify with others across distance, you know, what for us, whether it be based on philosophy or, you know, anything like that, like those are very helpful, like very concrete tips for how we might organize ourselves, I think.
And yeah, so what I was hearing then, about the clans and stuff like that, just using something like time banking as an example, it's like the way that it's a vehicle for connection across difference, because people come in with all sorts of different motivations to do it, but it's finding things like that the basic agreement is that everyone's hour is worth the same, and then that enables you to start having conversations. It's something that bridges that trust thing, isn't it? So and like the whole the thing about deep listening and also slowing down to speed up. So I'm just focusing on, I'm just calling it other space. It's other space in the in between spaces, in the edges, like permaculture edges. It's where most is happening. And it's, in terms of, I've not read the whole book yet, or rather listened to it all yet, but culturally, that our sort of Western culture, it's like all like outputs, doing stuff, busy, and it's like there's something in that people are overwhelmed with that. So that's an opportunity, I think, to enable that other space, and that space of the connecting across difference is crucial. But it's like, what are the vehicles? It's like it's the linking thing to begin with before you've even connected. So time banking is just one example of that. It's like when you think, I don't know, if you go on a ski holiday or if you do something, you've got that thing in common that enables you to talk. It's finding those linking things in common, and then it's the unlearning how we communicate. And I hosted an assembly in December, and it was exactly that. It was how we host a lot of our meetings. It's like going in circle, or when you're witnessing each other rather than responding, and people really struggle with that. So there's some simple things, to actually practice that stuff, listening. And the whole thing about going into the other space, it's with curiosity, because we've lost our curiosity about why someone else has got that opinion, and it's maybe being less attached to the fact that we're right. I'm right. It's like, and being curious about the what's underneath it, because probably underneath it is there's a lot more common ground, isn't there?
I'm wondering, is it maybe, my theory is that this being right, you know, this I am right, you are wrong, stuff that goes on forever. My theory is that this is because of the way our education system works. You know, we are actually trained to be right, because if you are wrong, then you get the bad grade, you cannot go where you want, and it's terrible. So we have to be right all the time, otherwise we are not good. So this is something that we have to unlearn. And I'm looking now if anyone has some ideas how to make a kind of a ritual when, because you have a you will have, whenever you work, you will inevitably have some quarrels and some misunderstandings, and you will have to find the way out of that. And the majority of us see this as a terrible thing, you know, arguments, and this is shit. No, we have to. And maybe if we could play it differently, so we say, okay, it's you see these things differently, and instead of you are stupid, we would say, let's see, maybe we can learn something out of it. So maybe we can find some new stuff with our disagreement. And I'm looking for some ideas how to actually make this happen in a community, in a workplace, wherever, that arguments that are inevitable, and they have to be there because it's the way how we work. We just need to know how to deal with them, and I'm looking for some good things.
So are we. Kate, I was wondering if you were going to say it. Conflict is wisdom wanting to emerge. Oh, you're on mute.
I was exactly thinking that tension is wisdom waiting to express itself. And that's the thing about being curious and going into the tension, isn't it? I found that so helpful. Just that sentence, you know, it's like, yeah, just I know people have found it really irritating when I'm going, I know we're disagreeing, but I know there's wisdom in here. I can't swear.
That's too funny.
There is so there's a practice, and actually there's a group that I'm working with. It's the Holistic Visions group that's gonna stay together. We've decided we want to make a kind of game that invites people into a kind of ritual that has some aspect of what I'm referring to as family constellation kind of work, but it is exactly a kind of work where you embody your shifting based on the perspectives that people are sharing. And there's a really cool thing that emerged from this book club beforehand, because I sent a Facebook invitation to a number of people who've been talking about the book or who've mentioned it. So Michelle Bowens, who's Belgian but living in Thailand, and then Bernice, who's Dawn's mother. Some of you have met Dawn, who was on our board. She's the founder of the Working Group on Indigenous Food Sovereignty. And Bernice is Sequetma, so she's from one of the Pacific Northwest cultures that the book refers to. And it was really cool because in talking about the book club, like, it's the middle of the night still in Thailand, so Michelle can't be here and Bernice wasn't able to be here, but this really cool conversation emerged about how to get through the old trauma, and it came up about family constellation work. And then Bernice said they had done some constellation work with their local ecosystem and with the salmon and with the conditions there. So it was just lovely to see that conversation there between someone in Thailand from Belgium and someone from the Pacific Northwest cultures, and just see what kind of emerged there. Like it almost felt like a little, mini mini microcosm toward a constellation. Kate?
And that's so amazing, because I had 3 hours of conversation on Friday about exactly that, and we're going to be doing that in Hull, so and the person who's going to be doing it isn't, you've met him in Barcelona, haven't you? But he works for the UN on it's like, well, social and environmental stuff, but it's around the food system and like reducing deforestation and all of that. But that's his area, that's what he's been working on, and acknowledging the trauma. And I've been like going, I really need to find embodied ways of like coming into the other space, and then this comes and that's amazing that you're saying that. And isn't it's just morphic resonance in
It's
it.
like holistic. Yeah, I would say like a constellation of the human family.
Yeah,
Be good to figure out how we get our human family fit past
yeah.
some of our traumas.
And that's exactly what we're looking at, because what he's been doing in mainly in organizations, but that he's wanting to experiment in how you do that across the whole city. And then we're bringing the control shift in, so we're going to be looking at it across all different sectors. And yeah, so it's a bit of an experiment, but in order to develop a methodology in a sense. Yeah.
It would be wonderful if you, whoever is interested, would want to share something like in a session with us. I would love to learn how you're doing it, and yeah, get a chance to see if we can be applying it more places and pursuing it in different ways.
I'm sure he'd be interested in talking about that, because that's what he's thinking. Yeah.
Kate, what is his name?
Charles O'Malley.
Oh, okay. So I just want to say it's been kind of fun to see how Garaz's point led to all of this systemic constellations conversation. That was a really I love conversations when they do that, when they sort of start going down little wormholes and ending up in somewhere really interesting. So you sparked that, Garaz, which is really nice. Kate, when are you doing that systemic constellations work?
Well, it's with the dates we've got in are probably the 7th of May. So it would have been great if you were still here, wouldn't it?
I know.
It's 333 here on the first day of spring. That seems nice. Which I noticed because I was thinking we could do a go round, move toward a close. We don't have to close yet, but we can if we're ready, or we can, yeah, think of some summation if you want to of the book or the session or what's on your mind. I'm excited to finish the book, so I have another chapter and a half left, and maybe there'll be some big revelation. They'll be like, "Oh crap! I can't believe I didn't read that before the session." But already I feel like a revelation for me is well, I feel very much connected in the human family with all of you, and I really appreciate having more and more members of our family farther and farther flung, and realizing and sort of, I think there is a lot of collective realization that our human family has some work to do, and hopefully I feel that there is some willingness to do it, come back together as a family. Yeah, so that's my summation today. I'm looking forward to it unfolding more. Who wants to go next?
really enjoyed this session, and it what strikes me, you know, when we've done summits in the past, and big part of the goal has been to get loads of people in, and but it actually feels really rich when it's smaller and we're having other space for us, because very often when we're meeting it's very focused on tasks, and it's head, isn't it? um and it feels like a relief, actually. It's like the right people come, and that this is really important. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
Mm.
Yes, it was really nice. It reminded me just what we said, that the Cherokee were talking about the sacred point of view of each of us. And maybe I think in our meeting, in our task meeting, we really listen and have respect. And for now, there were no arguing, but it could be nice to remind to, yes, it's to play, to be the other, to take the, for just a moment, the other one sacred point of view. And for them, it's every point of view is respectable, because it's only a point of view, no more. But it has its, and maybe for the one we are not agreeing about, you know, because their decision in their life currently, trying to take their point of view and ask them to maybe endorse their point of view. But then you give me desire to read these two books of David Graeber. The Depths, it was a long time, so I will see if I can find it to make my computer read it to me. And I'm also willing, because he's talking about the down, I think, of everything. So I'm waiting for the rise of everything, of something. And it's, yes, it was really a pleasure to have time to speak a bit more intimately. And nice to meet you, Chris.
Chris, very good to meet you too, Sybil. So I'll go next then. Yeah, this has been such a nice conversation, such a rich conversation. It's wandered. I love conversations that wander. And in terms of sort of thoughts on how to apply in life, I'm actually been going for the last week or so an intense and furious battle with somebody else. It's funny, Garaz, where we're both claiming to be right. And it's an interesting process because there's both the sort of needing to stand one's ground, as it were. If you just completely say, here, let me understand you, and you understand that person completely, and they don't bother to do the same thing, you are a sitting duck. I mean, really, you are sort of lost. And part of the process, because I've tended to be a person, I think, I see myself as a person who likes to people please, and I like to see what other people think, and I like is I've really had to stand up and say, excuse me, this is how I feel, this is what I'm saying, and only then could I then turn around and say, no, I'm ready to listen. So it's all of these things. Just being a human being is so incredibly challenging, and that's just between two people, and then you've got community, and then you've got nations, and then you've got the globe. So I think this has just been a really interesting and fun conversation that raises both the challenges and the possibilities. It's been really fun.
Really glad you made it here.
Me too.
Yes. Didn't we some time ago had some conversation, and we said that it is really good that we talk to each other, that it feels really right, and that we need to do it more often. So we should make this more like you know, I don't know, every 2 weeks chat.
We were doing, we could do that. We were doing it every week. It turned into the summit planning. So it was the big picture salon, and then we decided we wanted to have summits. So I had actually meant to rekindle that during the summit and the shitty parties. So we can do it every week or every couple of weeks and just a big picture conversation. Yes, let's. We'll just put it on the schedule, figure out a time.
Yeah.
So great. Want to continue with your summation or checkout?
Well, I was just when Sibyl was talking about well, this is a dawn, so now we need to see a rise of something. So maybe we can say, okay, now the reciprocity loop will rise up and and all this work that we are doing, and something nice will happen. So. Who's next?
Kurt, Emily, Tim?
I guess as you're all talking, gave me a flashback to a conversation I had last year, and it's in a conversation where I was sharing a little bit of tension about how, like in community organizing or being a change maker, and you feel like you make progress in a set of ways and you celebrate that, and then it seems like the people you're working with or kind of what's happening around your shared interests, that it kind of dilapidates a little bit. And what the person shared with me was very useful. They weren't taking it as being convinced that was actually what was going on. It was like, in terms of, it was pointed out to me that that's way it may seem from my interest and what I wanted out of it. But what was posed is that it's like a converging corkscrew, is that there's a natural flow that is convergent, like you're coming down, like I think in terms of physics or whatever, you say like a vector, you're kind of coming down to a definite destination and you're kind of converging onto that axis and you're going down. So it feels like you're on a downward spiral, but you're not on the right dimension, for where you're going. And I think some of what we're talking about today falls into that type of an analogy that I never heard before, before last year. So that was pretty useful. And then I think of the cliche of, the idea of not letting the past or the future rob us of the present. So that's something that's a useful cliche to me, because I know I get caught up in things, and being a change maker, you're constantly driving towards, what you want in the future. But I guess for the Solidarity Summit here and being with all of you right now and celebrate what all of us represent together right here, right now, I'm always really excited to come back to this. So thanks again for everything you guys do.
Those were some pretty shiny nuggets of wisdom you just laid on us. Thank you.
I have my moments.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Emily?
So again, I want to thank everybody for everything they do, and so as I found this interesting, and I was thinking of reading the book since I haven't yet. It's like an interesting book.
Awesome. I hope to see you Thursday. And Kurt, I don't know if you're available to make the drive, but it'd be lovely to see you at the party if you can make it.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to make it out to Madison. It's not gonna be shared on Zoom? Is there?
No, not this one. It's just gonna be an outdoor party. Invite people to come together. And Tim, are you there? Did you want to give a checkout?
I don't think I see, like, if you look at his participant listing, it's not showing sound at all. It's just video.
Oh, okay. Okay. So hopefully we'll see Tim in person on Thursday. So Thursday we're hosting a party here in Madison to celebrate life and transitions, and we're gonna celebrate Edgar. We're gonna have his books and share some memories and stories of Edgar, and then everyone who has been part of the Time Bank and our previous effort, Madison Hours, and there are so many people who've we've loved and lost here, and we're gonna just invoke them all, and then just have a chance to be together and talk about how, if people want to move forward together, just party and celebrate. And the reason I'm mentioning that we're doing that here in Madison is I just want to invite people to do that in your local communities. If it feels right to you. I know that many of us have been through a lot of transitions with organizations and things, and it is helping us, at least so far, to sort of regroup and reground. And so in honor of spring, I just thought I would share that and share some encouragement for people to celebrate spring with the people who you've been on this journey with, whatever this journey means to you. And thank you very much for being here at the book club. Did you have something that you wanted to, anyone have one more parting thought? Just saw a couple. All right. So we have a bunch of things going on. We're going to meet every week in April to have Let's Get Our Shit Together parties. We're embarking on a new software ecosystem project, and Chris, just because you're newer to it, and anybody else who wants to learn about it, would totally love to update you or have you see what's going on currently, and if there are ways that you want to connect. And otherwise, thanks everybody for being here. It's been a lovely Solidarity Summit. Happy spring, I guess, for our New Zealand friends. It's fall. Happy fall. And we'll see you in 3 months for the Solstice Summit. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stephanie.